The image you're looking at is the culmination of all my efforts. It is called the Tolton Bank. It is a model of the future of urban education based on the contents of this podcast. Welcome to our final episode, the Tolton Bank, Planting the Seeds. I begin with a quote from my favorite theologian, Walter Wink. A better system will not automatically ensure a better life. In fact, the opposite is true. Only by creating a better life can a better system be developed. This is what the Tolton Bank concept is all about. Using our own resources, creating and developing both youth and adults towards a better life, and building a better system in the process. And by a better system, I mean one that develops humans that are more pleasing to God. And by more pleasing to God, I mean behaving like we are all His children. In short, a system that develops humans to love one another. Such a system sound unthinkable? You may be right. But I say, let us not forget Matthew 19, verses 26, that tells us, with God, all things are possible. Now, the Tolton Bank concept stands on top of the following ideas presented in the general. 1. Urban education, as a distinct aspect of urban life, cannot be separated from society, making a very difficult societal analysis a necessary starting point in developing any potential solutions. That analysis was provided in earlier episodes and concluded that much of our main troubles are due to our deep belief in an outdated epistemology that is grounded in mechanical science. It creates our dangerous either-or way of thinking. We showed it to be the root cause of confrontation, disagreement, and the inability to reach consensus on major issues, putting our great nation in serious peril, in my opinion. It was argued that the final statement from this way of thinking was, my way or the highway. This in turn leads to increased hate, violence, division, precisely the state of our society today. It is also, by no coincidence, the state of our world. Additionally, it was argued that both neoliberalism and curriculum are tools of the elites that use the corrupted and often immoral idea of profit maximization to continue increasing the gap between the rich and the poor, and more than anything else, cement their future wealth. We understand that the fastest growing wealth gap today is not between the rich and the poor, but is between the rich and the super rich, generating entirely new problems and potential solutions. We also understand that the societal forces of neoliberalism are as powerful as natural forces like gravity. We will use this same force and power to achieve very different goals. Not included in this podcast, but very relevant to this new model of urban education, were discussions on the nature and power of capital, the impacts of evolution on current times, and the unstoppable accelerations of most everything in our society. By the way, you want to hear something funny? The latest unstoppable acceleration will be women's eyebrows. I think I'm kidding? Check it out. Phenomenal. Details on all these important discussions can be found in my book called The Tolton Bank, Foundations for a New Vision of Urban Education. It's published by Christian Faith Publishing and is available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. The Tolton Bank is specifically designed to address the deep societal problems of racism, discrimination, and poverty that engulf many poor communities, argued by prominent researchers as the real reason for the intransigence and stubbornness of the problems that plague urban education. Now, an important piece of my research acknowledges the many responsible corporations that are socially conscious. A list of them can be found in my book. These corporations are helping consumers and our environment while making a profit. The general says that they are doing their fair share of help making this a better world, but they were not designed to combat the very deep social issues specifically found in urban areas. I now officially present to you, good folks, the culmination of all my research and prayers. The Tolton Bank. The organizational chart breakdown. Remember, our mythical Tolton Bank is about ideas, not detail. So we will examine boxes 1 through 4 of the above high-level organization chart using broad conceptual strokes. By the way, as an FYI, my own extensive background in banking, education, and research makes me well suited for this organizational concept. Inside box number 1, it is a bank. As such, it exists to create capital. Significant research from my dissertation clearly shows that without question, capital creates gigantic social forces. I extend this thinking onto this proposed organization to say that those forces can power real social change. In other words, by creating capital, the social forces necessary to build better lives and communities can become a reality. This is the practical response to our quantum epistemology from episode 4. It is the new thinking Einstein proposes that will be needed for real change. Research shows that solutions in urban education come and go constantly. One researcher called them fashion trends. With that said, the long-term viability of this new model of urban education, the bank concept itself, is evolutionarily speaking fit to survive. The actual oldest surviving bank in modern times is Banca di Montepaschi di Siena, if I said that right, Italy's third largest bank. Founded in 1472 by the magistrate of the city-state of Siena, Italy. It was started as a mount of piety. It has been operating ever since. Their original idea of a bank being a mount of piety, in some respects, is similar to the corporate mission statement of the Tolton Bank I will unveil later. As to what will the Tolton Bank actually do, historically, banks, for the most part, create capital by accepting deposits and lending. Our bank will be no different. The movement of deposits from other banks to the Tolton Bank is a main part of the nonviolent revolution with tiger's teeth to be discussed in box 4. The Tolton Bank's lending function will emphasize 2 distinct directions in accordance with the ideas and principles from the general. Our new quantum epistemology tells us that everything in the universe is connected in some way. Therefore, our lending will focus on A, building technology and infrastructure for a greener world, and B, creating and building companies that are fit to survive. Inside box 2, it is a school. The education unit will be a fully integrated department within the bank, just like auditing, lending, marketing, IT, customer service, private banking, finance, retail operations, security, strategy, and other units, after years of growth, of course. This unit will be managed by an educator as a senior executive and board member of the bank. Education of our youth will be based on our new idea of curriculum detailed in episode 4, where we significantly lower in importance mathematics as a distinct separate discipline while elevating in importance the humanities during the earliest of grades. This is where the Tolton Bank looks to really change the future direction of society by beginning the process of subordinating our current either-or mechanical way of thinking to the and both quantum way of thinking. I can present these core ideas thanks to the brilliance of Dana Zohar's introduction to quantum science and a new understanding of reality discussed in earlier episodes. This bank unit will aim to cement the very unique corporate statement of love one another to future generations by teaching this new quantum reality as a basic content in our new curriculum, beginning in pre-K. I ask readers to look at their own lives, where their opinion of someone changed, often drastically from good to bad, or from bad to good, after they got to know them. This should at least signal the importance of our new curriculum, at least conceptually. Learning to understand each other is critical in developing a more advanced human, one who sees himself or herself in others, thus mimicking our new epistemology that tells us that everything in the universe is connected. With our new quantum view of curriculum, understanding ourselves, others, and our planet is the primary target of an education, standing firmly on top in terms of priority of our ability to quantify things. In short, the Tolton Bank will develop humans who see people as far more important than mere things. The journal says children's learning about this fundamental aspect of reality re-elevates the humanities as subjects to be mastered from the earliest grades, starting in our new pre-K for 2 to 4-year-olds. We will find new ways of teaching basic mathematics through the humanities. The many specific distinct disciplines we use to quantify things, like mathematics, physics, chemistry, computer science, finance, etc., can begin much further along a student's education timeline after years of learning and mastering about themselves, others, and their environment. The real exciting part of Box 2 for me is the following. What I am most hopeful for and confident in is that the education department will ultimately lead our young students to renewed support and desire for profit making, but a complete rejection because of their advanced education in humanities of profit maximization. I passionately argue once more that the two are as far apart as East is from West, with the former spiritually grounded in our quantum epistemology and the latter materially grounded in our mechanical epistemology. My love for the idea of profit making, it's not new. I get support for this from the thoughts of Henry C. Simons, a favorite economist of mine, who was once called the Crown Prince of the University of Chicago School of Economics, the birthplace of neoliberalism circa late 1930s. But why him? In his most famous work, an essay entitled A Positive Program for Laissez-Faire, Simons called for a program of reform to bring private enterprise back from the life during the Great Depression. Back to life from the Great Depression. My apologies. In dramatic and brilliant fashion, Simons, a strong proponent of conservative principles, thoroughly rebuked the idea of profit maximization and warned of its dire consequences, all of which have come true today. I say plainly that I am in full support of his basic conservative principles, as opposed to a Keynesian or welfare approach to economics, and fully support his rejection of corporate greed and abuses. Of critical importance, the Tolton Bank Education Department will be organized around a new concept I coined the IFP, which stands for the Individual Family Plan. Its overall objective is to bring education into the public and private light via image technology and love. Urban education will no longer be a great public secret as to what is really going on in these classrooms. I've seen this reality for myself. Believe what I tell you. If you have not actually been inside some of these urban clues, you have no clue what is really going on. Suffice it to say, I've seen things that bring tears to my eyes, literally. In many cases, it is tragic what actually takes place in these classrooms. Far too many students' disrespect for teachers is chilling and shocking. From the very beginning, advanced image technology coupled with smartphone usage will be employed so that parents and their children have the ability to communicate with each other face-to-face almost instantly anytime they are in school, if need be. We will develop relationships between parents and their employers, so this continual communication is not only allowed, but encouraged. As someone who has first-hand knowledge of what actually goes on in many of these classrooms, I cannot tell you how much I think this will be a great differentiating factor that will garner great public support as a truly new way forward for urban education. Parents will have the ability and responsibility of physically seeing what their kids are doing in school during the day. The Tolton Bank will help families financially as they educate their children, with such help increasing as their children do better in school. Inside box number 3. Neoliberal growth strategy. The Tolton Bank, guided by its unusual corporate mission statement to love one another, will use the economic forces of mergers and acquisitions and strategic alliances, both here and abroad, to gain the requisite size and financial muscle to improve our will on communities. By the way, my book has the details on where this love one another corporate mission statement comes from. You will see that it is based in quantum science as well as scripture. Of great importance, the general does not totally reject the idea of neoliberalism outright, even though many of its harmful tentacles, particularly as they relate to profit maximization, make a rejection of it seem near mandatory for many socially conscious researchers. I do not follow their recommendations. The reasons are spelled out in my book, and I don't see the benefit of adding more complex stuff to this podcast. Inside box number 4. Nonviolent revolution with tiger's teeth. This dramatic phrase sounds like an oxymoron, but what does it mean? The general argues that the historical nonviolent approach to social justice and inequality from such prominent and brilliant leaders and thinkers like Martin Luther King Jr. and Mahatma Gandhi, while spiritually and intellectually accurate, lack the teeth necessary to change the evil outcomes of systems like the Board of Education under firm control of the elites. I use the term tiger's teeth to denote the ferociousness, hate-filled mean-spiritedness of those evil cultural behaviors that overpower and conquer so many marginalized people and their communities. I say plainly, these evil cultures need to be combated directly, not an idea for the faint of heart. It is not a mistake to call the general the drama of a spiritual war. I'm dead serious. Consider the cultures of apartheid, Nazism, and the KKK, along with the new one, Trumpism. The general argues that not understanding these cultures as evil realities that exist through time is a big, big mistake, and very possibly a fatal one. It is totally naive to think that today people acting through and getting their strength from their historical cultures, like the KKK, for example, will change their evil behaviors toward others unlike them without being forced to do so. This is where the nonviolent revolution with tiger's teeth takes center stage. To summarize the intent and purpose of the Tolton Bank concept, I insert the following dramatic quote from a principal of a Detroit high school. This is what he tells us. If urban schools are to offer their population of minority children access to the American dream, a powerful political and economic force must move into the educational arena to represent their cause. The alternative is complete failure and the destruction of urban schools. I tell you, he's absolutely right. That powerful political and economic force needed to save us from complete failure is the capital-creating ability of a bank where the education department itself reports to the board of directors. Okay, let's wind down to the conclusion of the general. What is the end game of neoliberalism? In my view, neoliberalism seems to understand the Christian prophecy of our end, found in Revelations, and responds with its own solution, a permanent global caste system. According to my research, the elites live lives so full of experiences that they live multiple lives in a single lifespan, and therefore have greatly reduced needs for salvation. In other words, they live, for all intents and purposes, somewhat like gods themselves, since they can do whatever they want, wherever they want, whenever they want, and to whomever they want. Peeking inside the social structures of this new permanent global caste system, because of the exclusionary mathematics of profit maximization discussed in episode 3, those in the shrinking upper middle class will become so frightened of joining the drug-infested, violence-filled lower caste that they will follow whatever they are told to follow, believe whatever they are told to believe, do whatever they are told to do without question or hesitation. I argue that this is already near a fact of life today. Thus, the ultimate end game of neoliberalism is the death of critical thinking. Okay, let's get to the podcast end. I ask each of you, given today's ecologically crumbling, super violent, and hate-filled world with often dysfunctional government, have we already passed the point of no return? Well, it sounds like an easy yes or no question, but it's not. The answer is yes and no. But how so? Since the general has hopefully established a logic to include scriptural and spiritual thinking in our mix of ideas, I add this from Matthew 24, verses 12 through 14, to our final discussion. The word tells us, because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold, but he who stands firm to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. Now, if we replace the word wickedness in these divine words with the word violence, it becomes clear that such a gloomy prophecy has real substance. Again, all one needs to do is listen to the news on any day. Now, personally, I am not a fatalist and would certainly not have written this podcast if it just predicted the end for us all. No, gloom and doom is not my thing, so to speak. I am a man of faith and hope. Yet I also believe unflinchingly in the Word of God that clearly speaks of the end times, which I believe we are clearly in. People, we are not in cyclical history, as many would argue. I say the saving grace and reconcilement in this seemingly contradiction of hope and certain catastrophe, with both sides, in my view, being sound and accurate, is that no one knows when our end will come. Theoretically, spiritually, economically, and even politically, it could be 5 years or 5 generations from now. No one knows for sure. I argue, therefore, that it makes perfect sense for us to do what we can to change our direction now, while we still can. Reap the benefit from that change now and leave the future to God. I say very confidently from the ideas presented in our story that a new vision of urban education can lead us down the path of this new direction, like a light shining from inside the dark. The general's ending invocation. For those who have been patient with me, the following homily wonderfully tempers any expectations I may have on the Tolton Bank idea. I know it was not for everyone, and I pray that there may be a few of you good folks out there that got some value from this podcast. Final question. What is the most I can realistically expect from the Tolton Bank? A homily written for Cardinal Dearden by then Father Ken Untenor. It says, we accomplish in our lifetime only a fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we do is complete, which is a way of saying that the kingdom always lies beyond us. We can plant the seeds that will one day grow. We water seeds already planted, knowing that they will hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces far beyond our capabilities. We cannot do everything, and there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. This enables us to do something and to do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for the Lord's grace to enter and do the rest. We may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker. The general is a worker, not a master builder. So I am with the warmest of thanks I can give each of you for listening. I know all too well that the general was not for everyone, even though I sincerely wish it were. If I can answer any questions on any of the content, there is an easy way to contact me on my site. So blessings to each and every one of you, and a tremendous thank you for listening.